My husband threw me out onto the street with nothing but a towel wrapped around my body because I refused to let his mother move in with us. "A freeloader like you has no right to defy my orders," he screamed, the sound punctuated by the sharp sting of his slap. But he never imagined that my brother, the true owner of the company where he worked, was waiting just outside the gate. And when he saw me in that state, what he did next sent shockwaves through all of our worlds. The clang of the iron gate still seemed to echo in my mind, along with the searing pain of the slap on my cheek. Silence enveloped the scene, broken only by the frantic beating of my heart and the distant rumble of thunder, as if the sky itself was screaming with the pain I felt. "My name is Stella. I am 32 years old. At this age, I should have had a stable life, a peaceful family, and a love that served as a sanctuary. But in my situation, all of that was an elaborate lie. I stood there barefoot, drenched by the rain, my hair plastered to my face, my body covered only by a thin towel. I couldn't comprehend how I had ended up here. Marcus's words echoed relentlessly in my mind. "A freeloader like you has no right to defy my orders." The furious shout from my husband, Marcus, his eyes blazing with rage. I couldn't answer him then. I just stared. But inside, something shattered. When you love someone for years and that person discards you like trash, something inside of you dies, not just love, but all your dreams as well. Just minutes before, our argument had begun, centered on the same old issue. "Stella, I will not repeat myself." Marcus had said firmly, "My mother is moving in next week. That's final." "But Marcus, I don't agree. We've talked about this before. It won't be good for our marriage, and you know exactly how she treats me." "Are you disobeying me?" he asked. His voice dropped, but his teeth were clenched. "I'm just defending my place in this house, in this life," I replied. A deafening silence followed. And then the storm erupted. Marcus, a successful businessman whose ego had inflated with his success, was not used to hearing the word no, especially not from me, ever since he landed his first major contract. I was Stella, his rock, his ally, the woman who had abandoned her own career as an architect to support him on every project, to build a home, to care for him behind the scenes of his success. But that night, when I refused to obey without question, when he felt a loss of control, it didn't matter that I was his wife. It didn't matter that our staff was watching. He treated me like a rebellious employee. He called me a freeloader, screamed at me, and then, without another word, shoved me out of the house. No clothes, no shoes, no dignity. I felt a chill, like an electric current, run down my spine. The gate slammed shut, and at that very moment, the sky opened up in a torrential downpour. I couldn't move. I didn't know whether to scream, to cry, or to just let myself collapse onto the concrete. My entire body was trembling. My spirit was broken, and my soul felt cold. "Stella!" A voice called from the darkness. I snapped my head around. A black SUV had pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and there, with a grim face and a burning anger in his eyes, was my brother, Caleb. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper as I clutched the towel tighter. "I came to get you. I called your landline. No one answered. I had a bad feeling." Caleb got out of the car, took off his jacket, and draped it over my shoulders. He helped me into the vehicle just as our gate creaked open again. Marcus emerged, tension etched across his face. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. But Caleb faced him head-on, his gaze steady and filled with a weary disgust. "Is this how you treat the sister of your company's real owner?" Caleb asked, his tone cold and sharp. Marcus froze, the color drained from his face as if he'd been bled dry. In an instant, all his power, all his arrogance, vanished. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "Exactly what you heard. The company you work for, the one you boast about to everyone, the one you use to flex your power, it's not yours. It belongs to our family. It's mine. You're just a junior partner, Marcus. And a partner who is about to lose everything." I closed my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Marcus and I had been together for over 8 years, and in all that time, he had always spoken as if he were the king of the empire they had built. I never imagined my brother was the one behind it all. "Stella, wait. It doesn't have to be like this," Marcus tried, stepping forward. But Caleb stopped him with a raised hand. "Don't say another word. Don't you ever raise a hand to her again. Don't you ever scream at her again. And don't you ever look at her like she's worthless. Because as of now, Marcus, all your privileges are revoked." Silence fell over everything. Even the housekeepers, peering from the windows, didn't dare to move. Caleb got back in the car. I sat in the back, still shaking, the wet towel clinging to my skin. But my breathing was slowly starting to calm. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers, as if trying to sweep life back to normal after a violent storm. "How long have you known something was wrong?" Caleb finally asked. "For a long time." "I just didn't want to accept it," I answered, staring out the window. I thought if I were more patient, if I understood him more, if I just endured a little longer, things would change. "And why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't want to fail. I thought that was the price of love. Because that's what I was taught, that a good wife stays, fights, and takes care of things, even when no one is taking care of her." Caleb swallowed hard. He was never a man of many words, but that night he understood the weight his sister had been carrying for years. "Stella, what you did was brave, and you are not alone." I turned and looked at him. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt seen. "You know what hurts the most?" I said. It wasn't the slap, not the screaming. The worst part was realizing he no longer saw me as a person, but as an obstacle, a shadow. Caleb's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The rain continued to pour, as if the heavens were weeping for me. "Well, it's time you stopped being a shadow," he replied. "It's time you took back your space." I didn't answer, but in my eyes, something ignited, not anger, not revenge. Something deeper, something Marcus had tried to extinguish for years, my dignity. Stella's story didn't end that night. In fact, it was just beginning. And even though she was barefoot, wounded, and with a shattered soul, a part of her knew she would never let herself be trampled on again. Inside that car, soaked and shivering, she was not defeated. She was awakening. And what she would do next, no one could have ever imagined. The air inside the car grew heavy. Caleb glanced at me in the rearview mirror but said nothing. I still couldn't speak. A lump had formed in my throat, and my heart was pounding with a strange mix of rage and shame. My skin was cold, stuck to the towel that was now heavier with rain than with the chill. New York City seemed to be asleep, but in my mind, everything was wide awake. Memories washed over me like waves, one after another, memories I had tried to bury just to keep moving forward. But now they returned with a clarity that stung. When I was 27, I left my job as an architect at a prestigious firm. I was the only woman on an all-male design team. I had won awards, secured major contracts, and was starting to make a name for myself in the industry. But at the height of my success, Marcus came along charming, confident, and full of promises that sounded like they were straight out of a movie. "You're different, Stella. You're the woman I want to be with. Not behind me, not beneath me, but beside me." And I, so tired of fighting for every space, every idea, every victory, believed him. "Darling, I just need you by my side while I build this," he said one night as we started planning our life together. "After this, it's your turn." It was the kind of promise whispered with closed eyes and clasped hands. I didn't hesitate. I submitted my resignation, packed my things, and moved into his house. I never once asked myself if that decision was fair. At the time, it was called love, but the after never came. What came instead was his mother, Eleanor, an elegant woman with a stern face and a soft voice that could humiliate you without ever rising in tone. "You're not good enough for my son," she told me, just weeks after our wedding, "but I accept you because he loves you, for now." From then on, every breakfast with her was a test, every visit an inspection. Eleanor always found a way to show that everything was her territory. She moved furniture without telling me. She corrected the way I folded pillowcases. She critiqued my speech. "Dear, you don't have to pretend you know anything about business," she said one day in front of guests. "Marcus is here for that. You just worry about running this house properly." I smiled, but inside, I felt like I was being squeezed dry. The first time I tried to get back to working on my own projects, Marcus wasn't rude. He was worse. He was patronizing. Architecture, honey? Now is not the right time. We're about to land the shipping company contract. I need your full support. And once again, I convinced myself that love also meant postponement. Back in the present, the car stopped in front of a sleek high-rise in Manhattan. Caleb turned off the engine and looked at me. "You can stay here as long as you need. No one will bother you." I just nodded. I had no strength left to speak. I got out of the car, still wrapped in my brother's jacket, and quietly went up. When the apartment door closed behind me, for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without asking for permission. A few moments later, Caleb came in with a clean towel and a pair of pajamas. "The guest room is ready. If you need anything, just let me know. You don't have to pretend to be strong here." I looked at him, my eyes welling with tears that threatened to fall. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Forgive me for taking so long to get here." Then he left me alone. I walked to the bathroom mirror and turned on the light. My reflection was like another slap in the face, unrecognizable. My face was streaked with tear tracks, my eyes were swollen, and my skin was red from the rain. But the most painful thing was seeing that I no longer recognized myself. "When did I disappear?" I whispered. I leaned against the sink, closed my eyes, and let the memories flood back again. I remembered the night I lost the baby. I was 2 weeks pregnant. I had been feeling pain for days, but I didn't want to say anything. Marcus was in the middle of a major merger and had asked me not to bother him with things that were probably nothing. You know yourself, honey, you worry about everything. So I stayed silent until I woke up one morning, bleeding. I went to the hospital alone. I pretended to the doctor that my husband was on a business trip. The next morning, when I got home, Marcus was sleeping soundly. I never told him, he never asked. That was the day something inside me truly died. That afternoon, in Caleb's apartment, I sat on the bed and took a deep breath. I knew I had to start talking, understanding, and remembering everything. I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew would listen without judgment. "Carla," she answered. "My God, Stella, are you okay? I saw a post on social media, said you were in a towel. What happened?" I closed my eyes. Carla was my best friend from college. We had drifted apart after I got married, not because of a fight, but because Marcus always had a reason for us not to meet. "Can you come over? I need to talk to someone who won't see me as a burden." An hour later, Carla arrived with coffee, a blanket, and a hug I didn't know I desperately needed. "What did he do to you?" she asked as we sat in the living room. I didn't answer right away. Then I said simply, "He threw me out on the street in a towel because I wouldn't agree to his mother moving in." Carla swallowed hard. "So that's what was in the video. I saw it, but it was blurry. I thought it was fake." I nodded. It hurt even to confirm that there were witnesses, that someone had filmed it, that my humiliation was now a public spectacle. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know. Are you going back?" I didn't answer. Carla looked at me more seriously. "Tell me the truth, Stella. Do you still believe you can save this?" I lowered my gaze. I'm ashamed of how much I believed, of how silent I was, of defending something that was no longer worth defending. No, but I don't know how to start without him. I have nothing in my name. My career has been on hold for years. I don't even have any clothes. "You have one thing," Carla said firmly. "You have your name, your story, and now, you have the truth." That night, as I tried to sleep, I opened an old folder on my email. It was from our first few years together. I saw pictures, sweet messages, promises, and signs. Signs I had chosen to ignore. A message from my mother-in-law. "Remember, a smart woman knows her place. Don't create tension between you and Marcus." A reply from me. "I just want to help. I don't understand why you feel like I'm your enemy." And another reply from Eleanor. "It's not about feelings. You are not his equal. You are here because he chose you. Don't you ever forget that." I shut the laptop, my heart pounding. For the first time, what I felt wasn't fear, but anger. Anger not at my mother-in-law or even at Marcus, anger at myself, for everything I let slide, for every time I stayed silent, for every time I swallowed the truth just to protect a lie. I got up, opened the small bag Caleb had brought, took out an old notebook, and began to write. I am not invisible. I just chose to stop looking at myself. What I didn't know was that the next day, upon reopening that folder, I would find something that would change everything I thought I knew about my story. Something that was not meant for my eyes, but could no longer remain hidden. It was 6 a.m. I hadn't slept for a single hour. The sun was just beginning to rise when I opened my laptop again, compelled by some unexplainable force. I had left the folder open, but in the early hours of the morning, I felt an urge to dig deeper. I started sifting through emails, files with generic names like accounts, notes, and drafts. And there I found it, inside a subfolder named Pending. I assumed they were just business documents, perhaps budgets, but what I discovered was different. It was a series of conversations, screenshots between Marcus and someone saved only as M. It didn't take long for me to realize who she was, Maya Santos. Maya was my best friend from high school, the sister I never had, the one who was with me through thick and thin in college, the bridesmaid who sobbed with joy on my wedding day. I opened the first file. The conversation was from 2 years ago. I promise this won't take much longer. I just need her to sign the trust fund renewal, Marcus wrote. And then what? You'll leave her? Because I can't keep pretending, Maya replied. I'll leave her, but I need to make sure she won't mess with the business. If she leaves now, my family's name could get dragged into it. Maya responded with a fire emoji and then a line that made me nauseous. Us against the world, right? The same tone, the same words, the words he used with me. I froze, as if doused with ice water. I didn't cry. Not yet. First came denial. This isn't real. There must be another context. Maybe it's a different M. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe. But I kept reading. There were so many messages, conversations filled with double meanings, shared plans, dates, places, details that were painfully specific. In one exchange, Maya described the lingerie she was wearing after a meeting with Marcus. In another, Marcus wrote, I fell asleep next to her last night thinking of you. That's emotional fidelity too, right? That's when my body gave out. I shut the laptop, ran to the bathroom, and threw up. Not because of what I saw, but because of everything I had chosen not to see before. I remembered a night, a month after our first anniversary, at a dinner with investors. I had spent weeks preparing a design proposal for a new mall. Marcus had promised me, tonight is your night. When I finally got to speak with the main partner, Marcus approached with a smile and said in a joking tone, Don't listen to her too closely. She's still learning. Everyone laughed, except for me. The investor changed the subject, leaving me with a fixed smile on my face. That night, I cried in the restaurant bathroom, and Maya was the one who came to me. From the other side of the door, she said, Don't take it so personally. That's just how powerful men are. They don't mean it. They just like to be the star. At the time, I believed Maya was comforting me. Now, I understood. She was placating me, covering for Marcus, making sure I wouldn't react. I went back to the room and sat on the bed. The dawn was casting a pale light through the curtains, and with that light came the most painful truth of all. I had been alone for a very long time. The loneliness hadn't started the night I was thrown out. It started long before, when I stopped getting messages from my friends, when my family started to distance themselves to avoid awkwardness with Marcus, when Maya became my one and only ally and she, it turned out, was my closest spy. I remembered a text from my younger sister a few months ago. Stella, I don't understand why you never come home anymore. Mom says you always have a reason. My reply at the time was, I'm just busy. You guys don't understand Marcus's world. Yes, they didn't understand. And neither did I. I was just following orders. There was a knock on the apartment door. It was Caleb. Did you get any sleep? He asked when he saw me. I shook my head. I found something, I said, almost in a whisper. Caleb came in and listened silently as I told him everything. When I finished, he didn't speak for a few seconds. Then, with a controlled calm, he asked, Do you still have those screenshots? Yes, they're saved. Perfect. Send them to me. What are you going to do? What I should have done a long time ago. Caleb, I hesitated. How long did you know he wasn't the man I thought he was?" He lowered his gaze, then answered, "I always had a feeling, but I had no proof." "And you defended him so fiercely." "I was afraid of breaking something you still wanted to protect. I didn't want to protect it, Caleb. I wanted it to work because I thought love was measured by how long you could endure." "That's not love, Stella. That's not love." I felt broken, but within that brokenness, something new was sprouting, an awareness I never had before, a clarity that was painful but liberating. A moment later, an unexpected message arrived from Maya. "Stella, I just saw the news. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm so worried about you." I felt my stomach twist. Maya was still pretending, still playing the role of the concerned friend, as if everything I knew wasn't real, as if our years of friendship could cover all the lies. I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up my phone and looked at old photos. The two of us at weddings, birthdays, the beach, coffee shops. In every picture, Maya was smiling as if life were a beautiful promise. But now, in all those photos, all I saw was one massive lie. I couldn't help but remember all the times Maya had been so understanding. When Marcus canceled our plans, she would say, "He's probably just exhausted. I get it." When I cried, Maya would listen, but it always ended with her justifying Marcus's behavior. Now I understood why. It was as if the entire story of my life had begun to crumble, as if I were watching my own life from the outside, through different eyes. I was no longer the victim of a simple betrayal. I was waking up from a long, deep sleep, and as painful as it was, I needed it. Later that afternoon, Caleb returned with news. "Marcus called me. He's furious. He said you're making up stories, that you're having an emotional breakdown." "That's exactly what he said?" "Yes." "And that Maya was the one who put ideas in your head, that you're the unstable one." I laughed. A bitter but steady laugh. You know what the worst part is? A year ago, if someone had told me I was overreacting, I would have believed them. But not anymore. "Not anymore," Caleb affirmed. I stood up and walked to the window. The city bustled outside, and I, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel small in the face of the world. "I don't know how I'm going to get up from all this," I said, "but I know I will never fall for the same reason again." Caleb came closer, looking at me with quiet pride. "You don't need to have all the answers right now. You just need to stop ignoring the questions." That night, I sat down to write. I didn't know if it was for a book, a legal document, or just to get everything out. But I wrote, "Some people don't betray you when they hurt you. They betray you when they pretend to love you. When they stay by your side just to control you. When they smile as they slowly push you off a cliff. I don't know what I'll do with this truth yet, but I know I can no longer stay silent. Because silence is no longer protection, it is complicity. And that complicity is over." Stella stopped writing. She closed the notebook with trembling hands. In her chest, a new kind of pain throbbed sharper, clearer. The fog that once clouded her mind was now a map. Painful, yes, but it provided clarity. The room remained dark. It was 2 a.m. Outside, the city lights still twinkled against the tall buildings, like distant witnesses to her sleeplessness. She felt the need to move, to change the air. She went down to the living room, turned on a small lamp, and picked up an old tablet Caleb had brought with her other things. It was inside a gray backpack, next to a book she'd never finished, and a scarf her mother had given her long ago. She held the scarf without unfolding it, as if by touching it, she could hold onto a piece of herself. She turned on the tablet. It took a long time to load. The wallpaper was still a picture of her and Marcus on a beach, smiling, happy, as if a lie could be frozen in an image. The tablet was synced to an old email account. Stella couldn't remember the password, but when she tapped the icon, it opened automatically. She started browsing with no specific goal. She went into old folders, promos, bank statements, events, and then a folder named Personal. She opened it, and amidst the junk mail, she saw an archived conversation under the subject M. She opened it. The first message was dated March, 7 years ago, a year before their wedding. Her heart pounded. Maya. Maya was writing in the same sweet tone she used on the phone, as if the written words were the other side of her voice. but what they said contained no sweetness. "Marcus," Maya wrote, "just be patient. Once she's broken, we can be together without any guilt." "I will," Marcus replied, "but she needs to sign the trust fund papers first." "I've already convinced Mom. Once that's secure, we can begin." Stella felt a weight on her chest. She couldn't breathe. She had to put the tablet down for a moment and cover her face. This was no longer simple pain. It was a toxic mix of rage, disbelief, and disgust. She looked again. "Maya, are you sure she doesn't suspect anything? She seems so devoted," Marcus wrote. "That's why. Because she's devoted. She'll never see it coming." That was the exact moment the world she knew ceased to exist. This was not about physical cheating. It was deeper. She had been used. While she was planning their wedding, they were planning her downfall. While she was building a home, they were constructing a massive lie. Stella stood up and paced the living room aimlessly. She needed air, but the windows were sealed. She needed to scream, but her throat wouldn't respond. So, in an instant, she called Carla. "Stella," she answered, obviously sleepy. "Are you okay? Can you come over, right now? What happened? Don't ask questions, just come, please." Half an hour later, Carla arrived, her hair in a ponytail, wearing a coat over her pajamas. When she saw her, Stella said nothing. She just handed her the tablet. Carla read in silence, undisturbed. Then she looked at me. "Before your wedding?" Stella nodded. They already knew what they were doing. It was all planned. Carla came over and hugged her tightly. "Stella, this isn't just betrayal. This is a strategy, a calculated use of you." Stella rested her head on her shoulder. "They didn't just cheat on me, Carla. They used me, all of them, like a pawn in a chess game, moved silently so someone else could win." She was quiet for a few seconds. "And I let them," she added bitterly. Carla took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. "No, Stella, you trusted. They abused that. Don't mistake loving for being naive. What do I do now? What does one do with this many lies?" "You expose them," she answered without hesitation. "You name them. And then you dismantle them." They talked more that night. Carla slept on the sofa, just like they used to in college. Stella didn't close her eyes. The anger no longer kept her awake. The next morning she got dressed, took the tablet and a folder, and went to the study where Caleb was working. "You need to see this." Caleb said nothing. He opened the files, read everything, and then rested his elbows on the desk. "This changes the entire plan." "What does that mean?" "Marcus didn't just abuse you emotionally, Stella. He committed fraud. If the trust fund was signed under fraudulent pretenses and Maya was part of a hidden conspiracy, we can file a lawsuit. This isn't just personal anymore. It's legal." Stella felt dizzy, but with it came a spark of hope, something that felt like justice. "Do it. Do everything you have to. But I'm not looking for revenge. I want the truth." Caleb nodded. "Then prepare yourself. This is going to hurt more before it gets better." That afternoon, Stella received another message. It was Maya again. "We need to talk. I can't do this anymore. You didn't deserve what happened." Stella read it silently. She didn't reply, but something shifted inside her. She had to see her. Not to understand, not to forgive, but to end it. An hour later, they were face to face in a quiet coffee shop. Maya was nervous, wearing dark sunglasses as if they could hide her shame. Stella arrived on time, her face calm but not cold. She was there for herself, not for Maya. "Thanks for coming," Maya said, removing her glasses. "I didn't know if you would." "I knew. I had to see you." Maya looked down. "Stella, there's no way to justify what I did. I hate myself for letting it happen, for making it worse. But it all spun out of control." "How long," Stella cut in, "before your engagement?" "At first, I thought he was just a game. He knows how to manipulate people." Stella looked at her intently. "He didn't do it alone. You were there, hugging me while you were betraying me, giving me advice while knowing you were in his bed. You pretended, and worst of all, you pretended to love me." Maya hung her head, a broken woman before her, but that was no longer enough for Stella. "Why?" Stella asked. Maya took a deep breath. "Because I always felt like you had something I didn't. A light, a talent, people who followed you." Marcus made me feel special. For the first time, someone chose me over you. The words were like daggers. Stella didn't reply. She just stood up and grabbed her bag. Thank you for the truth. I have nothing else to say to you. Maya tried to stop her. Stella, please. Is there anything I can do? Yes, she said without turning around. Disappear from my life. That night, back at the apartment, Stella didn't cry, she didn't scream, she broke nothing. She just sat in the living room, turned on the light, and wrote a new line in her notebook. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about letting go. And finally, I am letting go. But as she was writing, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. If you think you know everything, you're mistaken. There's something more important you don't know. Ask about the Viridian Point land contract. You'll be surprised. Stella stared at the screen. She felt that the betrayal wasn't over, and the worst was just beginning. The trembling in her fingers was no longer from fear, it was from a simmering rage. She didn't reply, didn't ask who sent it, she didn't need to. What was clear was that she hadn't finished digging beneath all the lies. Viridian Point. It wasn't the first time she'd heard that name. She remembered Marcus mentioning it in private conversations as an exclusive project. He always said the investment was too complicated to explain to her, a bet on the future, and that she didn't need to worry about the details. Now she understood why. She spent the entire night awake, driven not by grief, but by a determination that was hardening her resolve. She scoured her laptop, old emails, forgotten folders, receipts. At 3 a.m., she found a scanned PDF document. It wasn't a contract, it was an authorization bearing her signature, a signature she had no memory of making. A transfer of rights to a plot of land at Viridian Point. 6 months after their wedding, she felt her stomach clench as if she'd been punched. Morning found her sleepless. At the first light of dawn, she went to Caleb. I need to know everything about Viridian Point. Caleb, who had learned not to underestimate his sister's newfound courage, looked at her intently. It's a property Marcus registered 5 years ago. He always said it was part of a private fund. Why? Stella handed him the document. That's my signature, but I never signed that. Do you know what this means? Caleb read it carefully, his brow furrowing. This isn't just a transfer of rights. This is you waiving any share in the development's future profits. He literally erased you from the map. Stella sank into a chair. Is there anything we can do? Yes, if we can prove the signature is forged or was obtained through deceit. But I'll need time, and you'll need courage, Stella. What comes next isn't an emotional battle. It's a legal and dirty war. She nodded. The wound wasn't as raw anymore. Now it burned with purpose. The following days passed in quiet solitude. She cried when her body demanded it. She threw up one morning, remembering their wedding day, the way Marcus had smiled at her as if he truly loved her, the sound of the applause, the proud look from Maya in the front row, everything so pristine on the surface, so rotten within. But afterward, she got up. She organized every document, every message, every piece of evidence. She created a digital and a physical folder, labeling them with dates, making notes, highlighting key lines. Everything that once made her cower now brought her order. The pain became a method. The fall provided clarity. One afternoon, while organizing the folders, Caleb entered the study with something in his hand. He silently handed it to her. A financial report. What is this? Marcus's hidden bank accounts. The ones he never declared. The ones he used to buy expensive watches, to travel with Maya, to fund personal expenses you never knew about. Stella looked at the document. She saw her name on some of the transfers as a co-owner. She felt a lump in her throat. He used my name to move money. Yes, but that's what will give us the advantage. If you file a complaint now, you can demand a full audit and freeze his assets. She looked at Caleb, a mix of pain and anger in her eyes. Did you know all of this? Caleb shook his head. I knew he was crooked, but I never imagined it was this bad. I thought I had him under control from the company side, but he was smarter than I thought. And you? You were his perfect shield. Stella fell silent. Then she said something she had been holding back for a long time. You know what hurts the most? I loved him completely, without reservation. I trusted him so much that if he had told me to jump, I would have, no questions asked. Caleb looked at her, his gaze soft but firm. I thought you were weak, but you were just too good. That was your mistake. Now I understand why Mom always said you were the stronger of us two. Stella lowered her gaze. I never felt strong. Because you mistook patience for weakness. But patience is endurance, and you endured more than most people ever could. Now is not the time to break. It's time to use all of that. That day, Stella reopened her old portfolio of architectural projects. She looked at the sketches, the renderings, the ideas she had buried long ago. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. It was like looking at a forgotten version of herself, a version she had interred just to support a man who never once supported her. She took one of the designs, a sustainable community center, a project she had dreamed of since college. She dusted it off, digitized it, and updated it. The next day, she requested a meeting with an old contact still working at the architectural firm where she started. "Stella!" the woman exclaimed upon seeing her. "I can't believe it. We thought you'd left the country." "I almost did, but I'm back, and I want to come back with this." She presented the design. The woman studied it carefully. "This is strong. Original. We need this. Do you have any idea how this would fit into the city's new urban regeneration plan? That's why I'm here." 2 weeks later, she had an interview with the project committee. She started receiving emails, calls, proposals. Some were small offers, others were significant. Stella still didn't fully trust the world, but she was beginning to trust herself. One afternoon, coming out of a meeting, she received a call from an unknown number. She hesitated but answered. "Stella Martinez." "Yes, this is Isabel Contreras. I work at the notary's office where the documents for the Viridian Point property were signed. We reviewed the paperwork following a judicial request and found inconsistencies with the signature. It doesn't match your official records. You need to come in as soon as possible." Stella froze. "What does that mean?" "It means there's a possibility your signature was forged. Can it be proven?" "Yes, but we need your authorization to proceed with the investigation. It's up to you. Where and when?" She hung up, her breathing heavy but her voice steady. She went straight to Caleb's study. "It's over. The signature isn't mine." Caleb hugged her for the first time since everything began. "Then we have them." She didn't answer. She just finally felt the ground beneath her feet, becoming solid again. But that night, while checking her emails, she saw an automatic notification. Marcus had tried to access a joint bank account they hadn't closed yet. And he wasn't alone. There was also an access attempt from an IP address registered to Maya's office. Stella closed the computer. The enemy was still moving and wouldn't go down without a fight. She was silent for a few seconds, then calmly stood up, a cold, automatic motion, like someone who no longer fears the fire because she has learned to walk on hot coals. For months, she had been reassembling the shattered pieces of herself. She was no longer the woman thrown out of her house, wrapped only in a towel, barefoot and paralyzed by fear. She was different now, a version that no longer needed permission to exist, a woman armed with the truth. The invitation arrived 3 days later. A gala evening for the Eleanor Vance Foundation. Her mother-in-law, a woman as devoted to public charity as she was numb to private suffering, was the host. The theme, strengthening homes. Stella smiled at the irony. The envelope was gold, the calligraphy elegant. Her full name was written in black ink. She knew without a doubt that it was a provocation. Eleanor never sent an invitation without a reason. It was a warning disguised as respect, just like everything she always did. Stella went to her closet. She chose a striking crimson gown, not new, but one she had kept hidden for years. She had bought it in Paris on an anniversary. Marcus had asked her not to wear it in public. "Too attention-grabbing," he had said. That night, it would indeed be attention-grabbing. She arrived alone, unannounced. The camera flashes turned to her in unison as she stepped out of the car. The entire entrance fell silent as she walked the red carpet. "Isn't that her?" someone whispered. Yes, the wife of the junior partner, the one who was thrown out naked. But look at her now. She seems different. And she was different. Caleb was already inside. Carla was there too, dressed simply, hidden at a table in the back. Everything was set. The media was present. The foundation's partners, lawyers, and the microphones were live. Eleanor saw her from the stage and immediately froze. She whispered something to an assistant, but it was too late. Stella was already walking toward the front. The music softened. The murmurs stopped. Stella ascended the stage. The event coordinator approached her, utterly confused. "Ma'am, this isn't in the program." "I know. But neither is the truth. And it's time for it to be heard." Stella took the microphone. The entire hall held its breath. "Good evening. I know many of you didn't expect to see me here, and perhaps many would prefer not to listen. But tonight, more than a celebration, we are going to speak some truths." The tension in the room was a living thing. Stella found her brother in the crowd. Caleb gave a single, firm nod. "For years I was part of this family from a place no one acknowledges." Silence. The silence at family dinners where I was ignored. The silence in business dealings where my name was used without my consent. The silence of a marriage where only one person made the decisions. And the silence of a web of betrayals masquerading as love. A murmur spread through the room. Marcus stood up from his seat, clearly uncomfortable. At a nearby table, Maya lowered her gaze. "I hold here documents proving the forgery of my signature on a multi-million-dollar contract, recordings that show my identity being used to transfer funds, and clear evidence of an extramarital affair maintained for years between my husband and the person seated to my right, my supposed best friend." A technician connected her laptop to the projector. Images began to appear on the large screen behind her. Message screenshots, the forged and real signatures side by side, bank statements. While this foundation is busy talking about happy homes, I was living in a home where I was told how to dress, how to be quiet, how to stay, where respect was a luxury and the truth was an inconvenience. Eleanor stood up, trembling. "That's enough," she shouted. "This is not the proper occasion. You are ruining a noble cause." Stella looked her straight in the eye. "The only noble cause here tonight is justice. You knew everything. You supervised the accounts. You signed as a witness on a fraudulent contract. Would you like me to continue? Because I can project your signature next." The entire hall went rigid. Marcus strode angrily down the aisle. "Stella, this is insane. Get down from there right now." But as he tried to climb the stage, Caleb blocked his path. "You don't have the right to even speak to her." The silence became absolute. The cameras turned. The crowd was stunned. Marcus looked at him with hatred. "You won't destroy me with her words." Caleb was unmoved. "No, the evidence and the lawyers waiting outside will destroy you." Stella set down the microphone. What followed was automatic. Police officers entered the hall. No one resisted. There was only shock. Maya was quietly escorted out by 2 officers. Marcus was shouting, demanding an explanation. Eleanor fainted into the arms of an aide. And Stella, in the middle of the chaos, descended from the stage. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She just breathed. Carla met her at the bottom of the stairs. "You did it," she whispered. "Not yet. I'm just getting started." The media swarmed her questions, lights, shouts. But Stella said only one line before walking out the main doors. Truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits for the right moment to shatter everything. Outside, the air felt different, cleaner, realer. And as she got into the car, she knew that she hadn't just exposed her betrayers that night. She had freed herself from them forever. But when she arrived home, she found an unmarked envelope at her door. Inside was a photograph. A younger version of herself leaving a building. On the back, a man and a handwritten message. "You don't know the whole story either. The worst is yet to come." Stella stood frozen in front of her door, holding the photograph in one hand and the empty envelope in the other. The picture was clear, taken from a distance. She was there, around 24 years old, walking out of an office building. Behind her, a man was slightly out of focus. She didn't recognize him at first, but there was something familiar in his posture, the set of his head. She entered the apartment silently, leaving the door slightly ajar, as if a part of her was not yet ready to fully commit to being inside. In the following days, the envelope haunted her. She had won. Marcus was facing charges of fraud and forgery. Maya had vanished from public life after the scandal. Eleanor had quietly resigned from the foundation. The media called her the woman who broke the cycle, the wife who toppled an empire, the architect of a collapse. But Stella wasn't celebrating. Not yet. The envelope hinted at something deeper, at missing pieces on the board, at secrets buried so deep she was no longer willing to ignore any of them. Caleb investigated. The building in the photograph belonged to a real estate company Marcus had managed before they were even married, a small project whose documents were nearly impossible to find. But when they gained access to the notary archives from that year, the truth emerged like a dark shadow over everything that had happened. Stella had been made the guarantor on a multi-million-dollar loan she had never known. Her signature was there, another forgery. That loan had been paid off using money siphoned from Caleb's company. It had all started before the wedding. Marcus had never loved her, not in any way she understood. He had chosen her for his own gain, because she had a clean name, a wealthy family, a well-connected brother. Because she was obedient, trusting, loyal. Because he knew he could use her without her ever suspecting. Stella stared at the documents in silence. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. The pain no longer lingered in her body. It left with her breath, as if she no longer needed it. "What are you going to do with this?" Caleb asked. "Nothing. I don't need this to destroy him anymore. He already destroyed himself. But if we show this, it's not about taking him down. It's about my own ascent, complete, with my head held high in the truth." And that's what she did. 3 months passed. Stella moved. With the help of her lawyers, she sold what was left of her old home. She used a portion of the money to open her own architectural firm. The rest, she invested in a support network for women who were victims of psychological abuse in relationships. She didn't call it a foundation. She called it a network, because that's what she wanted to build. Connections, support, solidarity. The first time she gave a public talk, she felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. But when she stepped onto the stage, she saw the faces in the audience, women of all ages, some with anger in their eyes, others with sadness, many just quiet, and she spoke. "I thought love could justify anything," she said at the end. "But there is no love where there is no respect. They tried to extinguish my light over and over, but I kept relighting it. Because that's what we women do when we remember who we are." There was applause, tears, hugs, and for the first time in a long time, Stella felt her voice was coming not from a place of wounds, but of strength. One October day, while reviewing plans in her studio, she received a call. "Stella Martinez." "Yes, I'm calling from the International Commission on Urban Development. Your community center project has been selected. We would like to invite you to develop it with our team in Lisbon." She hadn't expected it, but she didn't hesitate. She packed quietly. Just a few things, some clothes, books, her drawing notebooks, a letter from her mother, and a small box with her name on it. When she opened it, she found something that made her pause. The towel, the very same one she was wearing when she was thrown out. She had kept it without thinking, perhaps as a memory or a scar. But that night, holding it, she felt no shame or pain. She felt respect for the woman she used to be, for the woman who survived, for the woman who decided to walk out, naked and broken, into a life of her own making. She didn't throw it away. She didn't tear it. She folded it carefully, placed it at the bottom of her suitcase, and smiled. The next day, she boarded the plane. As she looked out the window and the world below grew smaller, she felt an unshakable certainty. She no longer belonged to the past, to fear, or to another person's name. She was just Stella now, free, whole, and new.